So after we left Nazareth and made our way to we're here now, that's where the Church of the Annunciation is, and we drove back to Haifa to get back on the ship, and we sailed back into the Mediterranean down to Ashdod the next day, which is where I'll begin next. Isaac, our guide, was kind of emotional as we left. Tell the people to come and visit. It's as safe as downtown Kansas City. So that's what he would say. Or safer. So the next morning, we disembarked in Ashdod, a 2-hour bus ride through the mountains to Jerusalem. Jerusalem, the country of Israel, is really similar to the U.S. Highways, restaurants, very, very similar, very modern outpost out there in the Middle East. No bigger than the state of Vermont. This was our first stop in Israel, and I'm smiling because it was a satisfying sensory overload that day of all these wonderful places that pastors talked about, that you've read about since Sunday school, and you got to be there. This was our first stop. On the other side of this location was the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall. There's the Dome on the Rock. There's the Eastern Gate. And down here is the Garden of Gethsemane. This is a giant cemetery here. And I think it was in Revelations they say Christ will return at the Eastern Gate right here. And what our guide said, Adrian, our second guide, is that they found a bunch of bones under the Eastern Gate. I guess his speculation was that people were burying their loved ones there for when Christ returns, the resurrection will occur, and we were resurrected with our new bodies, and that's where they want it to be when that occurred. So I totally get that. The interesting part is that's our belief. These are Muslim and Jewish graves here, so that's kind of interesting. So our next stop was the Garden of Gethsemane. And they went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." And he took with him Peter and James and John and began to be greatly distressed and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch." And going a little farther, he fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he came the third time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? It is enough. The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners." This is the Garden of Gethsemane. And I never realized it till one of Pastor's sermons that Gethsemane is a sub-area in the Mount of Olives. And when you think of Mount of Olives, you think a mountain, and you're up high. And I always envisioned Christ and the disciples looking down on Jerusalem. That's not the case. Gethsemane is at the bottom of the Mount of Olives, and you're looking up at the temple, and I'll show you that in the next photo. So that kind of took me off guard and reset my mindset. These trees are 1,500 years old and likely related to the olive trees that were there at the time of Christ and the disciples were there. Another reason why it may have been down at the hill is when you harvested the olives, and olive trees were so important at that time for the oil and other things that they needed for, as important as gasoline is for us probably in their civilization. So it was at the bottom of the hill. When you harvested the olives, you just take them all downhill rather than up. So it's really logical, the location where Gethsemane is. In the middle of the remaining garden is a Church of Agony, and we walk to the front of the Church of the Agony, and I look up, and there's the East Gate that I can see from the bottom of Mount of Olives. And so I just paused for a second to take this photo. I was pretty sure what I was looking at. This is the beautiful facade of the Church of Agony. They also call it the Church of All Nations. I'll tell you in a second why they call it the Church of the Agony. But again, a beautiful facade, architecture, worshiping God and inspiring others to worship God. Just like when you sing a beautiful song, or create music like Handel's Messiah. More beautiful art and architecture commemorating this location. And look at the beautiful dome here. Did you ever see colors like these inside of a church? But just a beautiful space worshiping God. And this is the altar area at the front of the church. And underneath that altar is, tradition says, this is the rock of agony. My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as thou wilt. Tradition says, and I don't know how archaeologically correct this is, again, Jerusalem was a small place, square mile-wise. Old Jerusalem, not bigger than Hillsdale. Okay? So it's not far-fetched after 3 generations after all of the storytelling, for that to be passed on. Yeah, that's where that occurred in Gethsemane, at that rock. So it is possible that is the location. After we left the Church of the Agony, we circled around the other side of the temple to the western wall. And as you know, that's the base of the temple. We did not get to go up top where the Holy of Holies was. The Jews will not walk up there to risk walking in the place where the Ark of the Covenant was. So they will not go up there. And as part of our tour, we didn't. I don't know if that was by design or because I don't know why. But the next time I go to Jerusalem, I'm going to try to get up there. And they led him to crucify him, and they compelled a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, to carry his cross. And they brought him to the place called Golgotha. So after we left the wall, we began the Via Dolorosa, a walk kind of up a hill to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And they have all of the stops where the significant events occurred during this walk. This was station number 5, which I just described in biblical text. Unfortunately, the whole way is marked by this market where they're trying to sell you stuff. But it was okay because we had a great guide who was a great storyteller, and we were focused on him and the stations. It was very crowded, and the smells were awesome. And next time I go to Jerusalem, we're going to stop in these shops because she was like, hey, wait, we go in here. And no, Kat, we're going to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Can I say one thing about the symbolism?
Yeah.
On this, he's getting ready to tell you that this is the marker where Simon helped Christ carry the cross. And if you look to the left, you see that cross and there's 4 crosses, 2 up top, 2 down bottom. There's 2 rules of thought on that symbolism that the guys were telling us about. And one is Christ is the center. His hands and his feet that were pierced, that represents him. And then the other school of thought is that the center is the gospel, and that at some point it will be preached to all the ends of the earth, north, south, east, west. So I thought that was interesting, some of the symbolism.
So we wind our way up through the streets of Old Jerusalem. And our guide is very knowledgeable, and we do shortcuts through these ancient buildings. I don't know what they were, these old sanctuaries, and people were there worshiping, and we just kind of were hurrying through, and we pop out into the courtyard of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and there is a unit of Israeli military there. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is where we get blown up by Palestinians, and okay, this is where we die. Because the whole time you're there, you kind of suspend that subtle fear. And when you see all of these military folks there, you're like, oh, okay, this is where, all right, we're good. But they were just training, and they were having lunch or something off in the corner of the courtyard. This is the entrance to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. One of the highlights for me on this whole trip. It's a gigantic building that encompasses the Golgotha, the site of the crucifixion, and the tomb. So a building encompasses that whole area. Like I said, the location is not more than the parking lot to the bridge where those two events occurred. When you walk in the front door there, when you go to the World War I Memorial downtown, there's that broad staircase. The government makes sure there's enough stairs for everybody, and make sure there's enough room, make it big. This is America. You go into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and it is a 1,000-year-old church. Again, archaeologically correct in my mind, and destroyed and built over time. So, but at least 1,000 years old, the current structure. You go in. Golgotha is up to your right, and you can't see it, but there's a small stone ancient staircase, one person at a time. There you go. You start going up that stone staircase, and you know what's up there. And the place is packed with Russians, per our guide. And because they're free now, they can exercise their religion. Packed with Russians, packed with people from all faiths, not all faiths, all parts of the world. And I don't like crowds, but I'm not mad about it. You know what I started thinking? This is my club. These people are here for the same reason I'm here, because they're Christians and they're worshiping Christ. This is their pilgrimage. And I wasn't mad about it. I felt good. I felt good about it, about being in a crowd for the first time in my life. So we get to the top of the stairs, and we see, this is the picture we took. I took this picture offline. We see Golgotha is encased in glass and lit, and you can kneel down and touch the rock. All right? But we couldn't go there because off to the right, in the upper part of the sanctuary, packed with Russians, right? Trying to get in. But we got to get this close, which was awesome. But you can see here the better picture under the glass here. This is the site of the crucifixion. So we took that in. That was a moment. And then we headed down the stairs in the church to the other side of the building. This, to me, was one of the most awesome pieces of architecture I've ever seen. So, I've got all these feelings and emotions about the side of the crucifixion, of the Russians, and the brotherhood, and the love. And then I come out to this other big part of the sanctuary, and I start thinking about that architect that is inspired to worship God through his architecture. He's thinking about not only the space, but the light coming in to this other building within the building that houses the tomb area. So to me, when we walked out and saw this ray of light from the sun coming in, it just was awesome. Another moment. Coming down on the top of this building in the building, is like God's saying, yep, right there. That's where he came up, and it's empty. But just beautiful. This is the entrance to that building in the building. Kat and I were not able to get inside of it because of our other visitors from around the world who were there. It was very crowded, but we did get this one shot on the side. And our tour guide said, Don't worry about it. It's just there's a slab of new marble on top of it because people have been coming in, chipping away, getting souvenirs, and so there's really not much to see in there. And so I'm okay with that. It's empty anyway. So then we took the bus from Church of the Holy Sepulchre to Bethlehem. Did you want to say something, Kat? Go ahead.
One of the things, if you go back to that other slide, Gare,
Yeah.
we didn't get a picture of it, but as you exit the tomb area, there is there's a corridor as you exit the church, and as you look to your left, it's a marble riser that is the length of Christ's body, and that's where the three women prepared him for burial with the burial cloth. And what was on to the left of that one riser were three beautiful, very large candlesticks. And they had, it was one for Martha, one for Mary, the mother of Jesus, and one for Mary Magdalene. And we were just so touched by that because as you walk by, people are praying and touching that area. And that was another moment.
When we got to Bethlehem, before we got to Bethlehem, we had to go through the security checkpoint because Bethlehem is in the West Bank area. Our guide had to bring on a Palestinian guide, and they're trying to get an economic engine going, so I get all that. So we had a wonderful lady, Palestinian Christian guide, and she led us to Manger Square in Bethlehem. And the angel of the Lord said to them, "Do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy, which shall be for all people. For today in the city of David there has been born," give me a second, "been born for you a Savior who is Christ the Lord." This is the entrance to the Church of the Nativity. As I mentioned, archaeologically correct in my mind, built around 300 AD. And they call that the Door of Humility. This is the front of this ancient church. Hasn't been changed much in 1700 years. When the Persians did come through and were destroying everything, they came to this building, and I'm not sure exactly how it all went, but they saw a fresco or mosaic of three wise men on the front of it. And they said, "Hey, these guys are in our club. We can't destroy this building." Right? And so they left it alone. So the Door of Humility causes a tall guy to bend over. And so we went in to the Church of the Nativity. And the Church of the Nativity is not one of these fancy modern buildings that you've seen before, designed by an architect. It is a simple, ancient structure where people from all around the world have shared their art and their love for Christ and hung all these ornaments there. It's a beautiful blend of humanity. It just makes you feel good going into the sanctuary. There were not a lot of Russians or visitors from other countries here in this site, and that's okay because Kat and I love Christmas. So we started making our way to the side of the sanctuary. And in the right-hand corner of the sanctuary, again, there's this ancient stone staircase down into the grotto where Christ is born, where one person can pass at a time. Okay, that's that stone area. And there's the crush of people wanting to get down into there, into the place where Christ was born, into that grotto. So you fall out into the grotto, and it's a small place. It's a small cave. Beautiful tapestries from around the world, people celebrating the birth of Christ. And underneath the tapestries there, I have a barn. I know what is manger or how I would feed the horse in a cave. I'd cut out a part of the cave to do a little inlet. And that's where I'd put the hay so the horses don't go on it, right? And that's where they would eat it. That's what's in the cave here, right? A little cutout spot. And you know how Kat is. She's making buddies with everybody. And that's our Palestinian guide, Shahira. So Kat and I start talking with her, and this is the actual location in that cutout area in the cave where the hay would have been. There's a silver star on the floor. And you only get a moment because there's a crush of people behind you want to get in. So you get your moment right there where Christ was born. Thankfully, it's the end of the day. We've been rushing, get here and there. And we come to the cave, and we're finally in there. Our wonderful Palestinian guide says, "Hey guys, do you know where you are?" She gives us that moment of clarity. You're in the place where Jesus Christ, your Savior, was born. And Kat and I was like, "That's right. That's where we are." She goes, "Do you want to celebrate? Do you want to sing some Christmas carols?" "Oh, yeah." All right. So we start singing one of my favorite Christmas carol. "O come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. O come ye to Bethlehem." And right as we got there, that's when I had another moment of clarity to start recording. And hopefully, it'll be queued up here, and I'll share that with you too.
Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord.
They had a mass every church. We have to leave.
I'm so glad to be able to share that with you. And we could hear people up in the sanctuary start singing a little bit too, so it got louder as the song went on. Then right after that, security came down and said, "You guys have to clear it out. We're about to start a service." So we just barely got in for our moment here that we'll remember for the rest of our lives, and I'm so thankful for. So that is the end of the presentation. I can. Hopefully, we were able to achieve our goal of bringing these events to life for you. These are real places where these things occurred, and encourage you to go on your next vacation or adventure to Israel. And I'm so thankful for your time and to be able to relive this and present it to you guys. I really appreciate it. So I'll be glad to take any of your questions. Kat, did you have something else?
Before you do the questions, we just wanted to have an opportunity to give back to the church for allowing us to come and share our story. And so, I'd like for, we have a children volunteer to come forward. Come on up.
Yay.
Going to open this box. Go ahead. Dig in. Inside this box is an ornament that we brought back from Bethlehem. And the wood is olive wood, of course. And so they carved this manger scene out of olive wood. And so we wanted to provide the church the opportunity to remember this moment and put an ornament from Bethlehem on the tree. Would you put that on the tree for us? Thank you so much. And we just hope this helps you to remember as we carry this forward with us in our hearts, that you remember as well. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.